Okay.
acquiescing from the masculine gender that yeah, this is where we need to be, which means you getting to the balance
Yes.
because everything right now is going to be
Topsy turvy.
yeah.
Well, the reason I say that we are we are experiencing female leadership is because the number of females who were elected in this midterm and the generational leadership roles that are emerging from it. The what the consciousness of leadership from the past generations is a female, Nancy Pelosi, and the new emerging leadership is coming from this young lady out of New York, Casio. What's her name?
Ocasio Cortez.
Ocasio Cortez.
Is it the younger one?
Yes.
She's
The
27,
new one.
I think.
Yeah, the newest one. I mean, she's the youngest one. I'm sorry, you're right.
So it looks like a convergence of generational leadership coming from females, and I see because of the difference in leadership styles, and because of the distrust that people are expressing in Nancy Pelosi for change to distrust, a bridge is being constructed. And while if you look at it from a political perspective, it appears as though chaos is emerging, but it isn't. Um, Nancy Pelosi knows that she's going to have to acquiesce to the desires of the younger leadership and the newly elected because of what they ran on. So I don't see Nancy Pelosi as being a leader more than 2 years.
But if she's smart, she'll look at the greater good and even mentor.
That's exactly what I'm looking at. She will be mentored. She would be the mentor, rather. And good morning. And I see that as a culmination of some of the things that we've been talking about. And it being it's being done in a spiritual cave. And what I mean by being done in a spiritual cave is
Thank you.
everyone's eyes is disaster and not looking at what's emerging because they don't see it as a quote unquote threat, for lack of a better term.
So it's in the womb being
It's being nurtured.
nourished. And
Yes.
the other thing too is that the younger folk new, and not necessarily just the young, those new to politics don't have the baggage of trying to do it the way that men have done it
Well,
for all these years.
men have depended on huge sums of money from people who would employ them when they got out of office. But the new people have done it without PAC money. They've done it from small donations.
Without pharmacy,
Yes.
all those.
So it looks as though there is a transformation taking place. And the transformation that's taking place is that the people are actually beginning to take charge of a government that they never had charge of. And that in itself makes for a better life for all involved. So when I look at that, and then I look at the death of religion, um, the guy who went to the island, the Sentinel Island off the coast of India, um, he went there to convert Centillians to Jesus Christ, to Christianity. I don't think that the people should be punished for what they did. And the reason I say that is because the island was protected by the government. He knew what could possibly happen to him because he wrote about it. He had been there before, and the arrow hit the Bible that he was carrying and didn't kill him. So he goes back the next day and ends up dead. I don't think they should be punished for something, for protecting their island. And there are those who would say, but he didn't have a weapon. Yes, he did. He was the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Common cold, measles, mumps, all these diseases.
And that's
Is
main
Skype up
that,
and running?
Huh?
Is Skype up and running?
Skype.
Is it working?
Skype is not up, no.
Go ahead and put Skype up, please.
Log on.
Okay.
and the thing is, they buried him, so who's to say that something hadn't been, a bug hadn't been planted anyway?
Yeah. Well, what they did, they actually, from what I understand, didn't touch him. They tied a rope around his neck and they were dragging him. Which means they, now this is my thing. There are, let's say that what they say is only in the teens. They don't know because nobody goes to the island. Let's say it's 15 people there. So these 15 people can't possibly be converted unless you go there and put your life at risk, right? When you're not you're in the midst of all these Hindus, how come you weren't trying to convert them? You see my point? So why is it that you had to go there? Because it's like people who tell you we need to go out and do missionary work in the community, and they only go to poor neighborhoods. Why? Because you feel like you're above those people. Now, I think he didn't do the Hindus because he knew what the penalty was going to be. You're going to jail. But I have empathy for his family, but for him, I understand. I understand what happened. And then we see where in Greece, some Serbians stomped this kid to death simply because he was black. He was in a club in Greece. He and some friends had gone to launch a clothing line. And this white girl wanted to take a selfie with him. And the Serbian said to her, all these Serbians in here, why are you talking to that N-word? And the white dude smacked the black guy, and the black guy punched him. And they left. And they caught up with him outside and stumped him to death. And they could not get a conviction. Prosecutors could not get a conviction, even though the camera showed them stomping him. But they said they're going to retry it anyway. So that says to me, we have reached a level of hate where things has to change, or there's going to be an all-out war against people of color. I heard Hillary talk about, say to the Europeans, you need to monitor, or you need to bring to an end your immigration policies because it's going to damage your economy. She's saying the same thing Trump's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been saying for years, there's no difference in them. My thing is this: if you get the hell out and leave us alone, we'll be fine. All the problems that people are running from in the countries, Europeans and American Caucasians created them. Think about it. These people were fine. If you look at the people, the indigenous people on these remote islands, they are fine. So if they are fine, if you find oil there, now you go take that, so you go to this country and you own something, that doesn't, you take something that doesn't belong to you. So when I look at all of these things, and then when I look at in relationship to all of this, the understanding that the Native Americans who were wiped out, more of them were killed from disease than from bullets. And all the diseases that we battle with, from the common cold to the flu, gonorrhea, syphilis, all of it came from Europe. All of it. And it strikes me as, well, not amazing. It strikes wonder in me as to why is it that the common cold and all these other diseases destroyed the Native American and other indigenous people around the world, but did not destroy the Africans. Even though these diseases was not in the midst, how come it did not destroy the Africans? Could it possibly be that the source of immunity to these diseases is the African? If that's the case, then if we do a spiritual translation of that statement, then the cure to the disease of hate and greed is also the African. Now, those things I've mentioned, feminine leadership, the missionary boy, the kid killing Greece, the diseases, all these things that I mentioned, if you take them and you look at the report that came out on Friday, I don't like to say global warming, it's climate change. If you look at that report, you see that if we don't deal with it, then we are facing destruction, annihilation actually. And when we look at the problems that are, hey Vic, how are you doing? The problems that we are facing as an African community, we have to come to a place of agreement. I'm sorry, we have to find an answer to them. And I think I know what the answer is, and that's something I believe that we will address more in depth in December. I think the answer to the problems or the issues in the community,
Can't log on either. Wait a minute, something.
I think those the problems are related to the lack of jobs.
What's gonna happen also when, with this bipartisan bill they signed as it relates to people who are in prison?
Prison reform.
Yeah, and that
Um,
people are gonna be getting out, and so,
That's
I mean,
us.
on the one hand, we're talking about the lowest,
Oh, hey,
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 Hi, can you see us?
I can see the ceiling and the fan.
okay, that's because of this.
Okay. Tell me when it's better, Audrey.
What do you see?
What do you see now?
Keep going.
Oh,
The
the camera.
ceiling and the fan.
The camera.
camera
The
right
camera's
there, show you.
in the computer.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
showing
it's
you.
it's the you have to adjust the one in
Yeah, the computer.
just the camera.
I
okay.
see the top
I'm,
of your head for Mel.
Up and down.
you
here?
see the top of my head.
Yeah,
So,
and the ceiling. Yeah, there you go.
What you see now? You see Vermeer?
I see
Oh.
Mel,
Okay.
okay.
Barb, and Deborah.
Okay, there you go.
She can't see me.
She don't need to.
Now what do you see?
Now I can see Evelyn.
There you
and
go.
Barb and
Okay.
Now what do you see?
Tilt it back a little.
Evelyn.
Okay, that's fine. That's good.
I
We can
forget what I
pass
said.
Okay. So anyway,
But
what?
But
Go ahead.
You see Evelyn still, right? Hold on.
Evelyn, and part of the ceiling
You got
Okay.
it's getting too far.
tilted down a little bit.
Down.
Yeah,
tilt it down.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, good.
That's better?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
A lot of it.
Okay, so.
Okay, now, what was I?
Morning.
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 Um. Oh, Barbara, you were saying something.
I forgot what I was saying.
We were talking about the
Bipartisan.
yeah
Oh, yeah.
the crime
And
thing.
we have the lowest unemployment rate supposedly that we've had in years. So are folk who are getting out of jail gonna be able to?
Okay, this is the thing. That bill's supposed to include the remedy for felons, that applications cannot have you or you're a felon on them. That would be the difference.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is you have to understand that unemployment is not as low as they say it is.
Mm-hmm.
What happened during the Reagan administration, Reagan stopped counting. He ordered the Labor Department to stop counting people who were not looking for employment.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, not looking. Who had stopped looking for employment? If you're not looking for employment, if your money has ran out, your unemployment check that is gone, then they don't count you anymore. So it's not as low as they say it is. Now, who does that affect more than anyone else?
People of color.
People of color, us. That's who it affects.
Well, yeah.
So it's not as low as they say it is. The other thing is that if we take all the things that we talked, that I mentioned, and put them in, bring them together, what we actually see is coming is the things that we have been shown that needed to be fixed. We see them coming to a head now, and it is my belief that nothing will ever be different until females are in leadership positions. That's where the difference comes. And I don't mean in leadership positions just in government. I mean period. I also don't believe that change will be meaningful until, what can I call it, Catholic Christianity is dealt with. Because the arrogance of this young man to go to this island because he felt like these people needed Jesus, that stems from something. The arrogance stems from racism, because Christianity is not based on the scriptures. Christianity is based on whatever white people say it is. And until that changes, no change will be effective. How does that change? We must see the spiritual for what it is. And what I mean by that is this: we cannot allow a group of people who has enslaved and slaughtered everybody they come in contact with and stolen from everybody on earth. We can't allow them to define righteousness. And that's what we've been doing. Because when you really think about it, no one talks about everybody needs Jesus except Christians. And where did it come from? come from the Catholic Church, but also in this country, it comes from Christianity. Who? Southern Baptists, white theologians. Think about it. And well, and when we look at it in relationship to what we've been talking about, we're talking about something that has grown into a beast. A beast is, when we think about a beast, we think about something without consciousness. We think about something without empathy. We think about something that is hell bent on having its way without any regard to what anyone else thinks or feels. And that beast of which I speak is what? Christianity. It is, and when it's Catholic, blah, 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 blah. Christianity according to Catholicism that has been transformed in this nation to Christianity according to Caucasians. Period. Because when I look at Matthew Henry's commentaries, the Scofield Bible, the Nelson Bible, and I do the history on these people, all of them are racist. I have a Scofield Bible, and one of the reasons I put it down is that I read in it about him. And one of the things, I read one of the footnotes that he had written, rather. One of the things he wrote was that just like red birds don't flock together with bluebirds, white people don't flock together with black people.
Oh my gracious.
Yet we take his commentaries on the scriptures as being fact. So you say, well, this Christianity of which you speak is also projected, infused in society by people of color. You're absolutely right. But it's infused in society by people of color because people of color have been brainwashed. Now, it is my belief that if the Bible itself, or the Holy Book, was wrong in terms of being the vanguard for racism, it would not exist anymore. I don't think it's the vanguard for racism. I think that it has been manipulated to appear to be the vanguard for racism, as well as a vanguard for anti-feminism. I think that it also has served as a foundation for greed. And when we look at that and we see that everything that I mentioned, with the exception of running at Jesus, the government protects it. The greed, all the isms that we talked about, they are seen more prevalent outside the church. They're more prevalent in government than any place else. I don't know why, I have a feeling that Brett Kavanaugh is going to surprise Trump and a lot of other people. I just feel that.
As Richard has just surprised him.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I feel it. Yeah, so
so Trump really sort of like epitomizes the head of the beast in a sense.
he is.
Because he's just reflective of all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Overtly.
Yes. Not only is he
I'm thankful.
Yeah. I'm thankful because of what I've done.
I'm thankful for
Yeah.
for me and what I've done for the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's his Thanksgiving statement.
I mean, that's, if you really want to talk about the equation on what equates in religion to him, it's the Pope. And when's the last time you heard them talk about child rape? but they go do all this big investigation.
Just like
You see, it just,
where are the mothers of these children?
to be frank with you, most of them are dead, because the ones who are coming out are older.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So the thing that gets me is, do you think that they did you and they gonna do your child? So if they've been doing it, they still doing it. That's my point. But that has petered out. All of these things, and it may sound like I'm rambling, but these are things that I see, and I see them as pieces of a quilt that has been woven together or sewn together, but I see us as scissors snipping at the stitches so that all of it falls apart. And rather than a tapestry of confusion and hatred, we have to bring together a tapestry of peace and love and kindness, mercy, and what righteousness truly looks like. That's what I see. However, we have to be honest about what is before we can deal with what is to be. And what is a Christianity that has no basis or no foundation in Scripture at all. And I said continuously, and I will keep saying it. Slavery, imperialism, colonialism, none of those things could have existed without justification from the church. None of it. So, I mean, think about this. How stupid can you be to fight in a civil war to protect slavery and you dirt poor? And the Confederacy passed a law that says if you own 2 slaves, you don't have to go to war. If you own a minimum of 2, you don't have to go to war. So all the poor folk who own nothing died to protect slavery, something that they had no part of. I mean, that's crazy to me. However, these were church folk, and it was the people in the pulpits who were telling them that they should fight to preserve the system of slavery. It was the church doing that. Now, don't get it twisted. Even some of the abolitionists did not believe that we as a people were humans.
What?
Yeah, some of the abolitionists believed that we were not equal to white people in terms of humanity or in terms of our intellect.
Well, that kind of sounds like
Some of the abolitionists believed that. So I don't want you to hear that word abolitionists and think that all of them were really in it for our good. They were not. Even when slavery ended, they did not feel like we deserved to be treated equal to other people. So all of these things have to be dealt with, and what I see happening, the destruction of democracies usually happen from within. You know, all of these weapon systems that supposedly are protecting us from the rest of the world are actually keeping the rest of the world under our thumb. And the greatest weapon of destruction for this nation sits in the White House. It's been destroyed from within, institution by institution. However, it must happen that way, because if you don't destroy that, if you don't tear the house down, you can't build another one in that place. So when I think about those things, I'm beginning to see a clearer picture of of the beast developing, I'm beginning to see a clearer picture of of the understanding of 666. A clearer picture when it talks about um, uh, here is wisdom, and the wisdom is what had preceded that statement, and then it goes on to say, let him who has understanding understand the number of the beast, which is the number of man, and that number is 666. I'm beginning to get a clearer picture of that. And the picture that's beginning to develop is one that does not distinguish itself. There's no distinction between state and religion. They are so interwoven until you cannot separate them. It's as if they're not tentacles that reach into all of the world, but the tentacles also are entwined in each other. I see them as conjoined twins. And I truly, truly believe that if religion, or if quote unquote Christians were to stand up and deal with what's in the scriptures, there would be no power in government. But as long as there is a Christian flag and an American flag in that quote unquote church building, there is their doctrines are conflated. There's no separation in it. Now, I was speaking with someone, and they said to me that when they look at Nelson Mandela, they see him as being chief of the people, and that's what we need, a chief. And my response is, no, we don't. When you have a chief and the chief is killed, then what? We don't need a chief. Everything that we need is already set up, is already operating. And what is that? A type of Adam who will stand in the gap. The battle is not one to be fought in the streets, but the battle is manifested in the streets. The battle is fought in the other realm. It's a spiritual battle, but it cannot be fought without an infusion of light or enlightenment from the other world, the other realm. And when that takes place, now we begin to understand with a greater clarity the wisdom of what's in the deep and how to change those things. Am I making sense? So, it does not take a physical political leader. It doesn't take a physical religious leader, because both of those things are material. Without money, neither one of those things can exist. Think about it. You don't need money to be available in the other realm. Money does not affect the spiritual. Jesus said you cannot serve two masters, Mammon and God, right? We talk about Mammon and God, but we don't talk about what he really said. He said you can't serve two masters. The key word there is masters. And in that regard, it's talking about what you submit to or who you acquiesce to. You can't be submissive to the material and to the spiritual at the same time, because you're going to favor one over the other. And that's what has transpired. There has not been any effort to teach or to even talk about being submissive to Elohim and let me deal with that a moment. When it talks about being submissive to Elohim, it's not talking about, Jesus is not talking about being submissive to something or Elohim that's out there or that's in the other world but not connected here. When he said Elohim, what he's talking about is make a choice. Are you going to be submissive to who you were created to be, or are you going to be submissive to the material world that you created? Can you see the difference?
Yeah.
So Jesus says that you're either going to be submissive to who you are, or you're going to be submissive to what you have created. Now, that in itself speaks volumes to what we are seeing. What did we create? We created religion. We, meaning mankind, created religion and created this God or this thing that's called God that's out there that you go see when you die. That type of thing. The scripture doesn't talk like that. So when Jesus talks about that, he concludes by saying things like, seek ye first the kingdom of God and righteousness. He concludes by saying things like, take no thought for tomorrow has enough, even if it don't, those kind of things. That's how he concludes this. So what is he saying? When you are submissive to who you are, then there are certain principles that you will adhere to without any regard for how people view you or treat you. And we always talk about being quote unquote Christ-like. You can't be Christ-like because Christ is not a person. It is power. If you want to be like Jesus, then you have to be controversial. Everybody thinks that being like Jesus is opening somebody's eyes or helping someone to walk or healing someone from leprosy. We think that's being like Jesus, but the leprosy, there were 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
The leprosy is the government. The leprosy are the laws of the land. 10 is law. So that's talking about the laws of the land that's killing people in a slow but painful way. And you say, what are you talking about? Leprosy is a disease skin disease that's painful. Now, if this is the case, then what is the pain? Is it not emotionally painful or spiritually painful when you can't make ends meet?
Yes.
When you see your children need and you can't answer those needs,
Yeah.
And some people have never experienced those things, but that's what he's talking about. When he talks about the lame walking, he's not talking about just somebody getting up and walking. He's talking about the things that have crippled us, and the things that have crippled us are religion and government. Those are the crippling forces in our lives. The idea of the centurion's daughter is talking about, is speaking to the idea that you don't deal with people based on how they deal with you. You deal with people based on how you are supposed to deal with them. And even though you enslaved me, even though You hold a gun to my head and force me to do your business. I don't hate you. I don't, I'm not the one to do anything destructive to you. So when we start talking about being like Jesus, we're talking about something totally different than what we have been taught from the racist, diabolical um, doctrines that we still, we, meaning a large portion of humanity, still hold on to. Now, I do believe that in the coming weeks, the focus is not going to be on the rest of the world. The focus is going to be on this nation. And the reason I say that is because I still believe that we were brought here for a reason. This is what I'm saying. If you live in a house and you leave that house and it's unattended, no one goes in it. You can cut the grass all you want. That house is gonna fall in, isn't it? If we were taken out of this nation, this house would fall in. Because we are the life of this nation. We are the life of this world. So it's, how can you go back to something when the whole world belongs to you? How can you go back to something when all the world are your children, all humanity comes from you? So this is a different kind of melting pot than what it is, than what we talk about a sea. The melting pot is one where all of where the facade of religion and manipulation begins to melt away, and you can see it for what it really is. And this is where we are. Now, mind you, if we don't stay the course, not only will humanity suffer because of the lack of basic needs, humanity will suffer because of climate change as well. We have to do what is necessary to calm the storm. Peace, be still. To calm the storm. The storm is not just the hurricane that comes in. The hurricane is a manifestation of the storm that's in the other world. Can you see that? It's just a manifestation of that. Let me give you some examples of what I'm seeing. From the time that the current leader in this nation was brought into office, and I'm not talking about just a physical man. I'm talking about everything the man represents. Okay. From that time, storms have increased. There have been more destruction from storms and fires than ever before. So this is the manifestation of the destructive nature or attitude of the concepts that this nation was built on. This is and honestly, if you really look into delve into the weeds and look at the origin of the documents, you would find that the Constitution actually came from the Iroquois Nation.
The what?
Iroquois Nation,
What's that?
Native Americans in the Northeast.
Okay.
That's where it actually came from. Benjamin Franklin just tweaked it to fit this what they were developing, but that the whole idea of judgeships, the idea of having consensus discussions and coming to consensus, that came from the Iroquois Nation, and it was just simply changed to fit what they wanted to develop. And if you think about what they wanted to develop. They wanted to develop a nation that was always in the hands of old white men. Without the Electoral College, we would not have the current leadership.
Well, isn't that why they didn't want Kennedy to become president? Because he was
No,
not
Catholic.
Catholic?
Because he's Catholic.
Because he was a Catholic.
Yes. And he had to go on TV and talk about how his allegiance was to this nation and not to the Pope or the Catholic Church. And after he went on TV and did that, he supposedly won, but there are some questions of whether or not he won because of the votes in Florida. Nixon was told to stand down, you get your chance. Because Nixon was Eisenhower's vice. And he was going to challenge the election, and he was encouraged not to. That's why he didn't challenge the election.
So the game is the same.
The game's the same, and the states are the same, Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, so nothing has changed. So, if you think that we can look at the politics over here and look at the church or Christianity over here and never shall the two come together, that's what is desired, so that you can't see the total picture. And that's why nothing has changed, because the church has been the one undergirding this system. And when it says that, when it talks about the beast in 666, and the beast is not an animal, neither is the beast a person. The beast is a concept of dominance, manipulation, arrogance, and all the other things that keep people in a servant position as opposed to being served. So I go all the way back to where I started, or when we started, when we were talking about that we are in a place of change because of feminine leadership. I've said to you many times that this midterm would elect more females than ever in the history of the country, and it did it. This does not represent women. This represents feminine energy. This is what it represents. And when you look at the class of 18, you see people from all walks of life. You see in Colorado, openly gay guy who was elected. You see open gay Native American lesbian who was elected. You see a Muslim who was elected in Minnesota. I mean, you can go down the line. All the things that have been deemed to be less than desirable are the things that were elected. That's why I say I speak to that leadership, because the concept of femininity is a concept that nurtures, it doesn't destroy. The reason masculinity is so destructive is because it fights to stay in power. We are to be men in the house, not men of the house. I'm the man in my house. I'm not the man of the house. Can you see that?
Yes.
I'm the man in my house. Which means that there is a sense of balance there. She doesn't tell me what to do. I don't tell her what to do. We talk about it. If it's beneficial, fine. If it's not, we still talk about it. I said to you that when we did the house, I wanted to do it much earlier, but Phoebe said no. And realizing that all the things that I've ever done that she said no to, it didn't work out. She says, so one day she came to me and said, it's time to do the work on the house. And everything fell into place. I mean, literally, everything fell into place. And I want to share this with you. The structure that we did, that's the upstairs and the den, of course, that we did, right? Everything fell into place, and when we did it, the framing, putting it in the dry, and hanging some of the sheetrock was done by a contractor. And I only paid him $1,500. Think about that. And the reason I did that is because he said his guys were not working for a few weeks because they had nothing to do, and said, I want to send them back to you and let you do some things, just give me $1,500. And that's all I have to pay. So that, looking at it, retrospective, that means that our desires for the structure were honored, because the desire was for people to be able to accommodate people. That was the desire. And when I look at it retrospectively, I see quite a few things, because the people who did the work, like the wiring, whether the wiring was done by a cousin of me, the sheetrock, the plumbing, the structure itself, either those people are out of business or dead. All of them gone. I'm saying to you that when your motives are right, I'm saying that if we take that and look at it on a broader scale, what do we see? We see that had it not been for the feminine energy, none of it would have been done. That's what I'm saying. If I had disrespected feminine energy, it would not have taken place. But I didn't. Did I understand that then? No. Only thing I understood was one principle that I've talked about so much. Whatever man and wife agree on, they can do it. And when she didn't agree, I didn't do it. When she did, I did it. That's what I'm talking about. Now, what happened in that regard? I was the seed. And the reason I say that is because when the house was built, I made sure that the foundation was strong enough to support an upstairs. Another floor, rather, I should say. Another floor. I made sure of that, because that was my desire. That's the seed. But I needed a womb to birth what I saw as the benefits of doing this. And when she said, okay, that was the birthing of it. You see where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, masculine and feminine energy must be understood and embraced if we are to continue the journey. And I don't have no doubts that we are going to do that. So when Barb talks about this bill, the reason they're not doing this because they love us. They're doing it because it costs too much to keep us in jail. I'm serious. That's why it's being done. The first state to do that was South Carolina. They did it quietly. Non-violent offenders, they quietly released them. So why was it done in the first place? Well, if male energy represents strength, feminine represents nurturing. If you weaken the community, the way you do is disrespect the woman and put the man in jail. Think about this. Most of the males, especially in the cities, most of the males during their childbearing periods are in jail. And when they come out of jail, they are at a different age than they would, like 20 years old, when people normally get married and raise families and stuff. They're in jail. That was done purposely. And the reason they increase sentences is to keep them in jail longer. So when they get out of jail, there is a different attitude about family structure. So what happens when they get out of jail? They have no place to go because you live in the projects or government housing, and you cannot have that person there because they're a felon, and you cannot get a scholarship or get a grant or a loan to go to school. So what happens? You put them right back in jail. Now, where did all this come from? This government went to South America and came back with some crack. The CIA did. And they moved the manufacturing plants out of Los Angeles, south of the border and up to Canada. And they introduced crack to the community. So there are no jobs. So now the only thing you have is what? Crack cocaine. Did you turn the air conditioner?
No.
Because it's cool. Crack cocaine, right?
If it's below 40 outside, that baby's not gonna heat up. I really have to buy a
Oh.
room temperature thing. I'm working on that.
Okay. So you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Now, what happened with that? The gains came from people, the guy said, I got to feed my kid, and there's safety in numbers. So we came together to protect each other. That's where gains came from. And if we had a job, we wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
So all of these things are not being done because they love us. They're done because it costs too much. Now, don't get it wrong. Now, it costs too much because some pressure had to be applied to free these males from prison. Now, one of the things we have to deal with when we come together is the whole concept of jobs and jobs and education. And I don't mean college. It doesn't matter as long
That's
as
appropriate training.
Yeah,
whatever
right.
those jobs are.
yes, that's what has to we have to deal with, and we're in a position to do that. The transformation has to take place. I believe that those bars, those doors are locked until such a time as this, where these things can be actually dealt with. And now that they are being dealt with, it's time for them to be released. I do believe that. Also, in addition to the jobs being moved out, what else you think they moved out of the community? And this is documented. What else you think they moved out of the community? No, you got a church on every corner. You got a church and a liquor store on every corner.
Okay, you said it was jobs.
What else did they move out?
No, I'm saying, I'm going back on what you said, that they took out, it was jobs and
Education.
education.
What else? No. Education comes under school.
Well, the businesses are tied to the jobs.
What they took out was grocery stores.
Sure is, because in the grocery stores.
Grocery stores. They took grocery stores out. You got food deserts. Why? Why would you take the grocery stores out? To ruin the health of the whole community. If you're not healthy physically, you're not healthy mentally. It's very difficult to focus. when you're diseased, when your body is damaged because of the lack of nutrition. You take the grocery stores out and you put food full of preservatives and fast food in the neighborhood. That's what happened. Now, there are folk who say, well, that's politics. It don't have no business with scripture. Yes, it does. Just because you give somebody food doesn't mean you're feeding them. You can be full and not be nourished.
True.
Right. And that's what's been happening. So, all of these things are things that are burdens on us. Bearing the burdens of our brethren. That's where we are. All of these things are coming to fruition. All these things are being dealt with, rather, or exposed because of our desire to make or to allow righteousness to flow into this realm. When I talked about the deep, one of the things I talked about was what's in the deep. Remember that?
Yeah.
The darkness that covered the deep,
Mm-hmm.
the wisdom that covered the deep. That's the same wisdom that Revelation is talking about, that 13th chapter, 17th, 18th verse. Anyway, all these things that we have talked about this morning are not in the deep anymore. They're not in that place of chaos and destruction. All the things we talked about are in or have become light, because the wisdom that covers them, if you understand that wisdom, you're able to see what's wrong and what needs to be corrected.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a desire to correct it, it is the light that brings about the correction, because the light begins to expose what's been hidden in the deep. And that exposure is represented by Khashoggi being killed in an embassy and consulate, and the leader of this nation saying it's okay because of money. You know, that's the exposure that's taking place. Prior to this, the deep existed without anyone really seeking to understand it. It was just there. But the wisdom to understand it has always been available. But we have not been exposed to it because we have been told and taught that this darkness is chaotic and evil, and the light is the pure, desirable thing. But when we look at the scriptures and see that darkness is not necessarily evil, this darkness is not necessarily chaotic. Darkness, wisdom also is darkness. Because we say, why did you keep me in the dark about that? Bring some light to this. You see?
Yeah.
So we've always known these things, but we have not made any attempt to understand them until now. So as we approach the end of this year, I'm not shocked that there has been a heavy burden placed on us to come together. I'm not shocked at all, because we are at a crucial point. We are at, you know how you get to a place where things don't necessarily go back to what they were, but they're worse, or they're changed?
Or they've seen them in worse.
Yes. We are at that crucial point now. And the decisions that not decisions, I'm sorry, the things that we desire, the understandings that we will have, and I am convinced that the tribes, the stones, the colors, these things will not be fully understood until we have come together and talked about them. Because I believe that Revelations is an unveiling of what is in the spiritual atmosphere, not the other world, but available in this world. And the reason I say that is because the other world doesn't need it. It is this world that needs the righteousness that is represented in Revelations. And the funny thing about it is, out of everything that that you read or we read in Revelations, it points to one thing: righteous, the New Jerusalem. Everything that's in there points to one thing.
So it's really the giving life to the concept of the end is in the beginning, the beginning is in the end.
Yes.
When we talked about the deep initially in Genesis, and then talking about Revelations, where Revelations just reveals that is having wisdom to understand what supposedly was what this darkness was, but
And again, Bob, here we are. Why do we see Revelation the way we do? Why?
I mean,
Traditionally,
because we were taught
we were taught by this. What was it? Caucasian Christianity.
who really didn't understand.
Right. And will never understand unless they are taught. The idea of rapture came in the 1800s, and now everybody's talking about a rapture. That's not to be found in the scriptures. There's no such thing as that. However, if I were to stand and talk about there is no such thing as a rapture, the first ones to attack me would be pastors who look like me. And what am I saying here? The master does not have to attack me. The master has trained soldiers who will attack me. Without any understanding whatsoever, they will attack me. And if I were to ask them to explain the rapture to me, when they get to the end of it, then I ask them to explain to me how Jesus is going to come back one more time, and the rapture talks about 3 or 4 times. Explain those things. There is no explanation of it because it doesn't exist. But yet, we fight to hold on to that. We used to expect the Word of God to draw, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when the Caucasian church started advertising, we started advertising. I'm serious. When the charismatic Caucasian-led churches put ATMs in, we did it. Everything that's done, we mimic it. But it has no basis in Scripture. Just because you articulate, it doesn't mean you're right.
True.
It has no basis in Scripture. This whole nation is a lie. It was never built on the foundation of Christianity. It was built on the foundation of CC, Caucasian Christianity. Christianity according to the slave masters, the greedy ones. the manipulators, based on that, not on this. And I remember very clearly saying, why would I want a religion that enslaved me? And this is when I was in college, well, even before then, actually. Why would I want a religion that enslaved me? It doesn't make sense to me to have a religion that enslaved. Why would I want Christianity in my life? When God despised me so much until he made me a slave. But that was my understanding of the scriptures as I was taught. Until I began to see it for myself. And understand that the scriptures is full of metaphors and allegories. And understand that Jesus is more of a myth than anything else. A myth, the meaning of a myth is something that is so true, it is difficult to explain. We think a myth is something that doesn't exist. That's not, it comes from the Greek word mythos. Look it up for yourself. We've been told that Jesus was visited by the Magi, right?
Yeah.
Magi is where we get magic from, but magic is a sin. Numerology, astronomy are sins. But that's how they found him. So, all of these things have to be revisited. And more as I look at Jesus in terms of the way he's written about in the book, I see more and more of what it means, what he was actually saying. And to be quite honest with you, the writings about Jesus are just as mystic as Revelation. People don't understand. They don't talk about the reason blind eyes is there. They don't talk about the idea of leprosy. They don't talk about these things. When Jesus said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and unto God that which is God, right? What was Jesus saying? Jesus said, listen, everything that belongs to the government, let them have it. But make sure that you render to Elohim that which is Elohim. What is Elohim? You are. You are. We are. Because that's who created us, right?
Yeah.
Our life. That's who we are. So that's what we render. That's what we give. Can you see that? When Jesus walks in and turns the tables over in the temple, that's not a building that he's turning them over in. He's turning them over in us. What are you talking about? We are the temple.
Right.
And he says that my Father's house shall not be a house of greed of merchants. In other words, where he lives in you should not be in a place where greed is sought after, or where greed is dominant. But it's a house of prayer, meditation. Can you see that?
Yes.
It's a house of meditation. It's a house of focus. And he said, my Father's house, a womb's place, is a place of focus. And it couldn't be the temple because he doesn't live in buildings. You see, so to understand the process that Jesus went through and the methods that he used to leave in plain sight the mysteries that are able to transform us from being just mere humans to being Elohim, or being the essence of what we were created to be. And we were created to be deliverers. And to deliver humanity. And the question is, if you are a deliverer, what are you delivering them from? And we talk about murder and all that other stuff. No. No. You're delivering them from a heart that's fixated on the material. I remember having said to Phoebe, and I maybe said it to you, I mentioned this to you rather. When I started seeing what I see in the scriptures, I said to her, I'm not saying that you're going to do this, but let me tell you how committed I am. You can walk away from me based on my changing. It's okay. Would it hurt me? Yeah. But you know what? I'm not going back. I'm not going back. And I remember having a conversation with my mama when she was talking about how differently I see things and how different it is from other ministers. And I said, Mama, let me help you to understand something. The Baptist church did not call me. They had nothing to do with my spiritual development. Nothing. I got to preach what I see. And when she saw people coming up to her at church on Sunday and saying, give me your son's number, I need to talk to him. Because when he prayed, things changed. When he talked to me, I feel better. When he came to see me, things in my life changed. Those kinds of things. That's when she began to see the difference. You understand what I'm saying to you? Yes. If she had told me, don't come back to my house anymore, which I can't imagine her doing, I would not have done it. It just, I can't. There is nowhere to go. When Peter and us talked about that, if we leave you, where are we going? What what do we have? We left everything to follow you. He wasn't talking about no fishing business. He said all this stuff that we were taught, we left it behind, and it doesn't exist. What do you mean? It never existed. So there's nothing to go back to. I can't go back to communion every Sunday, first Sunday, and telling you do this as often as you may remember to me, just like you forgot who he is. I can't do that. I can't do the baptizing name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost anymore because Matthew 28 has nothing to do with water. I can't do that. I can't talk to you about being born again and equating it to being saved because that's not what it says. I have to talk about returning to beginning because that's what it says. I can't talk about those things. I can't talk about Nicodemus coming at night as much as I talk about Nicodemus coming in darkness because his thoughts were chaotic. A brilliant man but had no spiritual understanding, but sitting there talking and leaving with an enlightenment beyond anything that he could have ever imagined, to the extent that he is the one who made sure that that Jesus was okay from that point forward. Why? Because he had a paradigm shift. Based on what? Based on this idea of being born again, of returning to beginning. So Jesus says the Spirit go where it want to go. You don't know where it comes from, and you don't know where it goes. Didn't he?
Yes.
So when he talks about, what is he saying? He's saying that the nature, your nature has no beginning and no end. So when you return to begin, you return to a womb, something that's always been there. That's what he's saying. And when he talks about, the beginning, talking about the water, he's not talking about being baptized. He's talking about the water that you came out of when you came from the womb. That's what he's talking about. All of these things make sense to me now. So that's why I say that the writers about Jesus are just as mystic as Revelation is. And 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 you will not understand, no one will understand Revelations if they don't understand themselves. You all know that that was the time I wouldn't touch it because I told you I don't know what it's saying. Yeah, I'm not gonna make it up as I go. Did I not tell you that?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden now I see it. Why? Because right now, the day that I said I believe that Revelation is right now, then things began to open up. Why? Because it is the now, and there's everything being done to destroy what we are beginning to see manifested. There are the churches, the government are seeking to destroy everything that's being manifested, and but it's too large for that to happen. Look at this. When you listen to them talk about the elections, what do they talk about? The manifestation of feminine energy. What? Yeah, because what they talk about is females are the one who turn the tide, but black females in particular.
Black people what?
Black females in particular. That's the difference maker. That's why Roy, whatever his name is not the senator from Alabama. Because 95% of African women voted for Jones. Turn the tide. That's why Kemp had to steal. Because a black woman beat him. A black woman who they call Angel Minor beat him. Yes. Call her what you want, but she beat you. So that's not a defeat. That's a recognition of the extent that masculine energy will go to stay in power. But there was a time when that would have happened and no one would have said anything. But now people are fighting for that black woman. When the Republican says that this is wrong, he stole the election, they're not fighting for a governorship. It's bigger than that. This is a woman in the deep South who won this election. This is not about a physical election. This is about a embracing of feminine energy that has the womb to birth anything that this earth needs. That's what this is talking about. You don't hear them fighting for Gillum. They stole that one too, but you don't hear it. It's a difference. So don't get dismayed at what you hear. Don't allow your eyes to convince you that what you see is real. Know in your heart that the one who created us in his image did it for a reason. And our existence is for a reason. We have purpose for understanding the scriptures. When I say to people the things that I teach, that I see, I have not read them anyplace. You know what their response is? Write a book. And they don't even know Barbara. I said, well, Barbara will write one eventually. She take all the notes. That's my hope anyway. What am I saying? I can't write a book about this stuff because when I teach it, I don't remember. Unless you ask me a question, I don't remember this. Why? I told you, you don't need to remember anything. Just embrace it. And when it's time, it will be brought to the forefront of your mind. Two things and I'm done. Why is it that if this was supposed to be done to the Senegalese in terms of introducing them to Jesus, right? Why is it that God couldn't find another way to do that? If everybody had to just know the man Jesus. Why did he have to do this expensive so much life and they still don't know? It doesn't make sense.
And why these few people when you're surrounded by millions?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's like it's always the people of color who need Jesus, but it's a safe one. He thought he was safe because it was a few. They may kill me, but when that spirit hit that Bible and didn't kill him that day, that convinced him. But then when you read his writings, what was his diary, he talked about forgive them. Do not hold against them if they kill me. That kind of thing. Was there a premonition? No. He knew by going there he would go get killed because everybody who go there get killed. So that was not prophetic at all. Anyway, I was talking to Robert the other day, and he was saying some stuff, and I said, where'd you get that? He said, my brain told me. And he kept talking. Then it dawned on me. I said, is your mind? He said, no, it's my brain. His imaginary friend is called brain. That it dawned on me that's his imaginary friend. And what made me think of that is that he talks to brain just like he talked to me. And that's why all these seemingly extraordinary things comes out of his mouth. Like stuff. Mommy, do you want to do an experiment? What kind of experiment, Robert? I want to do an experiment with some stuff because all experiments explode, right? He's never done an experiment before. Where did that come from? Stuff like that. This stuff. My friend, my college roommate, his daughter, and was there, and Robert was rubbing her hand, and she says, "Are you flirting with me?" And he said, "Am I?" Where'd it come from? This guy and this girl walking in the place, and he stepped between and looked up at her and said, "Hey, my name is Robert Richard." And she says, "Good to meet you." And he said, "And your name?" Where does it come from? You see? His friend Brain. Because if you ask him, he said, "Brain told me that. My brain told me." These kids, when you nurture that, they continue to see through the eye. We are just beginning to see through the eye. Let's don't mess it up. The easiest way to mess it up is to get caught up with material stuff. What I don't have. What I can't do. Who doesn't like me. The church is this, the church is that. You lose it. Not in the sense of can't find it. It begins to get cloudy again. And you cease to see. That's the reason people who I once taught, when I see them, they still stuck at the place where they were when they lived. Because that's all they can see. The last thing I want to say, unless there are comments or questions, is this. I have no clue as to where this is going. But it amazes me that people who were here and left, they're still at the spot where they were when they left. How come they could not go beyond that? And how come they couldn't go back? They stopped in one spot. They can't go back because there's nothing to go back to. They can't go forward because how can you understand it without teaching? In different stages of the teaching, you see different people who are stuck. Now, do I believe they're supposed to be here? No, I believe they're supposed to be right where they are. I really do. I believe that who is here, and when I say here, I'm talking about those that the Creator allows me to cover to teach whatever. That's how that's supposed to be. Now, I'm done unless there are questions. Today, I hope I didn't ramble. I certainly, sometimes inside of me, I feel it because all of us running together. And sometimes I don't get it all out. I misspeak. But I have a feeling that I'm going to begin seeing more and more of what Jesus meant to this earth. I gave this Baptist preacher asked me for a Quran. I gave the Quran to him, and I was talking to him on the phone, and they were talking about how amazed they were at how the Quran speaks so glowingly about Jesus and Mary and stuff, and how it speaks. This was the key. How it speaks about females and how they should be treated. They were shocked. But it changed their whole idea of Islam. The whole idea. If you haven't read it, how can you criticize it? So, no questions, no comments. I hope you all had a great holiday. Abraham Lincoln gave you that Thanksgiving. Abraham Lincoln made it possible. So take advantage of it. Okay, I'm done. Lady, Miss Audrey, hi. Bye.
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 Have a
Bye.
good week.
Oh God.
Bye, everyone. Have a
Thanks,
great
y'all.
week.
Y'all have a great week.
Bye.
See, hey, Sheldon, see you in about 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
That's code for something else, right?
It is.
I know what
Enjoy your company in New York, Sheldon. Oh, yes, sir. I did as well. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate seeing you and the family. Hopefully you were able to put your plan in action on the way home. Absolutely.
Okay.